Joining us. It is the last Saturday of the month, and as always, if it's 7 o'clock and the last Saturday of the month, it's all happening at Odyssey, so welcome to the Bliss Catchers. I see a lot of people who are new in the audience, so my name is AVIS, and along with my wife Vani, I host the show every month here at Odyssey. Odyssey, an institution by itself, has been supporting this journey for us all these years. It's our 4th year doing this show, and it gives me absolute joy to work with the team at Odyssey. They always have everything ready, as you can see, and a lot goes on behind the scenes before even the show comes here every last Saturday of the month. But what is the show all about? What is the Bliss Catchers all about? And I thought, let me take a couple of minutes to introduce the show to you. I'll introduce the show through a line that I read on my Facebook wall recently. I have a young friend, and her name is Atirupa, and she had recently been to Leh. Atirupa, incidentally, is the daughter of Geeta and Manichandran, so that's why I was looking at them. So Atirupa had recently been to Leh, and she had posted a picture from there. She's sitting on a small rock in the middle of a stream, which is actually the confluence of 2 rivers. And she says, find where your joy is and go there. That was her line. And that's really what Bliss Catchers is all about. The joy of understanding what gives you joy and going after it. This is not an original idea. I think it's been there for many centuries. But one man who made it very memorable was Joseph Campbell, the American mythologist and author. He said, follow your bliss and doors will open. So he basically encouraged people to go do what they love doing. And the Bliss Catchers show is in celebration of Joseph Campbell's philosophy. And every month we bring guests here who are people who have dared to walk the untrodden path, like my guests here today, Ashwin and Ram, and go do what they love doing. Now, why do Vani and I do this every month? Vani and I have been following our bliss for a couple of decades now, but somewhere in the middle, somewhere in the 10th year of being entrepreneurs, we hit a rough patch, which still continues. We're going through a bankruptcy. A long, prolonged phase of worklessness and pennilessness taught us that what's most important in life is to be happy. To be happy despite our circumstances. So in this time, as I was sharing with Raj, my dear friend here, a little while ago, there were many suggestions. Why don't you get out of this line of work, go do something else, make more money, so you can get out of all your financial problems. And somehow it didn't feel good here. While it appealed to the mind, it didn't feel good here. And we have never strayed from that path of bliss. So when the idea came up to have a show on the concept of individual happiness, people going and doing what they love doing, we immediately jumped at it and we said, hey, we are happy to curate it. And that's why Vani and I curate this beautiful series, which is into its 40th edition now. This is the 40th month that we've been doing it over the last 4 seasons. And each edition, thank you so much. Each edition brings us in touch with wonderful people who have not just identified what gives them joy, but they've had the courage and the conviction to go do it. My guests this evening are 2 such Bliss Catchers, and let me introduce both of them to you the way I know them. I met Ram through his dad, actually. His dad is a good friend of mine, and I'm writing a book called The Happiness Road. And Ram's father, Keshav, is a very eminent artist, and I wanted to understand what makes Keshav do what he does so well, and what's his idea of happiness. So I was having this conversation with Keshav in their home when I met Ram, and Keshav introduced me to him as a photographer, and I kind of said, oh, okay, nice to meet you, Ram. And we became friends on Facebook. And over a period of about 7, 8, 10 months, I kept seeing Ram's posts. Some of them pictures he's shot, some of them ideas that he's got. And I felt something very unique about his photographic expression. And that drew me to him. So Vani and I invited him for coffee one day. And by the way, all the Bliss Catcher conversations are first curated over a cup of coffee, most of the time at Starbucks. So Ram, Vani and I met at Starbucks. And I was very intrigued to learn there that he had actually dropped out of college. He said, physics is not my line, I don't want to be doing physics all my life. I don't want to be in a regular 9-to-5 job. And so he had the conviction to give up his college. He became a wedding photographer to keep himself going. Went on to sign up for the Hallmark Institute of Photography in Boston, Massachusetts, and did a program there. Came back to India and is now specialized in character study, portrait, and lifestyle photography. It's a very unique space where, the way I understand it, Ram, maybe that's not the way you may see it, but the way I understand it through his pictures that I've seen, this space is really about giving expression to the inner voice of the subjects. So whoever he's photographing, he's making them come alive through his pictures. And that's the reason why we have Ram today as my Bliss Catcher guest. So thank you, Ram, for joining us this evening. Ashwin, we didn't even know Ashwin. In January this year, we spotted a story in the Times of India which said that a gentleman quits his corporate job because he loves being with fish. Or the title was something like that, very catchy title. And we read the story and we got excited. So I Googled Ashwin up, and it led me to an email ID, and I dropped him a mail and he replied. And again we met at Starbucks over a cup of coffee. And what was interesting was, about his story that I picked up in that conversation, is that Ashwin fell in love with fish at the age of 10, but for the next 30 odd years, as he progressed in life, went on to build his career in the corporate space, somehow his bliss kept following him and kept connecting back to him at different times. This is what I picked up. And he stayed connected, he stayed, in my words, hopelessly in love with what he loved doing. And at most times when we are in what we call a midlife point, around the age of 40, when people are keyed up over how am I going to bring up my children, how am I going to settle them, how am I going to pay my EMIs, and how am I going to grow in my career, Ashwin did something very daring. He quit his job and he took the deep dive into what he calls the aquatic life, right? And set up Aquaria, which is right down this road, which is a business that helps people at one level understand the life and behavior of fish. At another level, helps them set up natural habitats for breeding fish and aquatic life in their homes and offices. Is that a good summary? Yeah. So that's what made us invite Ashwin to the show. So thank you, Ashwin, for joining us. And that's Ashwin and Ram. May I now request you to So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Okay, so you're taking the center stage. Okay. Set. set. You just get comfortable with the bar stools. If you'd like to just pick up your mics and keep them ready. So the format of the show, for all of you who are new here, the format of the show is a conversation which will be between the three of us for the large bar. We do have three interesting segments, let me say it this way. We have a quiz segment in the middle of the show. So keep listening to the conversation very intently. You will have questions come your way around 7:35 this evening, when I will ask you a question each on Ashwin and Ram. And if you get the answer right, then you win that beautiful mug. Okay? You win that beautiful mug. And I'm told that, and Vivi Batra is here. Hello, Vivi. I know you have a collection of mugs. So does Geeta Manichindar. So do Ati and Dr. Chari. So a lot of people here are regulars. So they do have a lot of mugs at home. And I've been told that the coffee tastes awesome in that. So,
tea also.
Okay, pretty awesome.
Tea also.
Okay, tea also. Okay, I think beer will also taste good in that mug. Okay, so we'll have a midway quiz segment, and then we go on with the conversation till about 8:05, 8:10, when we will have the guests ask you questions of their choice, when you can again win mugs. So totally, we're giving away 4 mugs this evening, okay? And anybody can go for those mugs. And there will be an opportunity to interact with the guests through a Q&A segment towards the end of the show. And then we will wrap up the show, as we always do, sharp at 8:29 p.m. So you have the rest of your Saturday evening free for you. And at this moment, as we start, Mr. Karnanani's health is sufficiently better than it was before, so I'm sure we will have no problems getting back home safe. So are we set? Yes, gentlemen, thank you so much. It's a bit warm today, and usually some of the air conditioners don't seem to be working, but I guess the conversation will keep you all pretty engaged and interested. Okay, so let's get started. Ashwin, let me start with you. Okay, so if we were to go back to your story, it starts at the age of around 10, or possibly younger, as your mom was just saying, when she got you guppy, right? And she got you that as a gift, right? Guppy is the name of a fish that Ashwin first received as a gift from his mom. So I have a question there, which probably I'll break it up into 2 parts. When you get a gift as a toy, or when you get a gift as a pet, there is an initial source of excitement. Do you remember anything of it at this time in your life? That's one question. And when you sit back quietly and reflect on that moment in your life, do you believe, are you able to recollect something that you can say was profound about receiving that gift at that time in your life, that that has brought you to where you are today?
I think receiving
you need to turn on.
I think we went to a trade fair, I think, and as usual, bugging my mom for a whole lot of things. Might have been 8 years old, not 10. And we got this pair of puppies, and that itself was a sort of excitement, because I'm sure I asked for a lot of things at a trade fair. So she finally agreed to get me a fish. And we always had pets when we grew up. We always had dogs, we had snakes, and all that. The first time I kept fish, young. And I think what was really impactful was what happened after. We came back, we kept the fish there. It was a male and female, it was a pair. And the female started giving birth. Now, I don't know how many of you all know about guppies, but they don't lay eggs, right? They actually give birth to free-swimming babies. In those days, we didn't have Discovery Channel, we didn't have Animal Planet, none of those. So those babies drop and they start swimming. And that was magical to me, right? Because you hadn't seen that before. You might have heard about it, read about it in a book. But to actually see it happen just blew my mind. And we counted 108 babies. I still remember the number.
Wow.
108 babies from that one female guppy. And we used up pretty much all the spare Horlicks bottles we had in the house. Because mom had kept fish in her trailer. So she knew we had to separate them, we couldn't keep them all together. And yeah, 108 babies. To see that come, you see life happening in front of you, that just blew me away. That's it.
Life happening in front of you blew you away. That's a beautiful sentiment. But when you look back, when you say, I don't know if you have a drink, but oftentimes when I sit down and have a drink, when's Venki? So I'm not at the moment. Because I was just telling him that I've been inspired through an inner call to be away from alcohol, right? But when I do have a drink and I reflect back on life, I feel that I can connect a dot to events that happened. Does that happen to you with that moment of getting that pair of guppy into your life and seeing the female birth new guppies and the Horlicks bottles, and what does that visual do to you today?
I think there are things that I've done since and I still do today that actually all just boil down to those moments, right? One, it is a life form that lives in a material or a substance so alien to us. It lives in water. And the way it functions, the way it lives, the way it behaves, all of that is because of that element, which is in some ways alien to us, right? Second, and then you have to figure out how to keep them not only alive, but to make them thrive, right? So there's that element of it. And then there's a whole element of giving them a habitat that's so happy that they continue to go through the normal cycles they would anywhere else, wherever they originated from in the wild, perhaps. So that whole cycle of birth, in the pre-production or the keeping the bloodline going, that kind of thing. That's what I do day to day now. And that's what it sort of boils down to those moments. Keeping those fish in an element that's so different from us, figuring out what they need and giving that to them. And then also making sure that when they look at carrying on the line, as it were, that they have all the elements needed for them to take care of their young and take it forward. Yeah.
So in a way, you're talking about the beautiful cycle of life of the species called fish, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to park a question that's coming to me for later on in the conversation, because it's very, very significant that you brought it up. But let me go back to that time you were still a little boy, and were awestruck with the 108 guppies that came into your life. You let that interest sustain in you, because by the time you reach class 12, which is, you must have been 15, you told me the other day that you had 32 fish tank at home. And now, again, I go back to the analogy of the toy. Children receive toys, they receive pets, and what they do is they grow out of interest, interest in them. They grow out of that interest, and they move on. How come your interest in fish sustained? What drove your sustained interest in breeding fish? 32 of them at home. What was your mom's thought at that time? Did she even think she was signing up for that when she gifted you?
No, in fact, she brought it up many times since, lamenting that day that she brought back those two copies. But I think, this class 10, and by class 10 I have 32 aquariums in the house.
These were regular aquariums, like tanks?
Big, small.
Okay.
The largest was a 6-foot one.
Wow. Okay.
But the rest were all small. So one of the unused sheds in the house was a fish room, and every major room in the house had a fish tank. Just took over the house. My parents were also very indulgent, I think, came back, thankfully. But I think I went through those phases too. I've had phases where I went through a gardening phase, planted a ton of cannas in our house at the time, and then I got bored of that. Like any kid, right? I used to love taking things apart, but I never had the patience to put them back together. So there's a lot of other stuff that I did, but the fish somehow stayed with me, and I think partly it was, it's sort of magical, like I said, that whole otherworldly element, because they're in water, right? The other thing is, I think as a hobby, there are few hobbies as educational as aquarium keeping. The reason is, I learned more about chemistry through a hobby than they ever tried to teach me in school, right? Because you actually see that happening in front of you. You learn about photosynthesis in school, but if you look at a planted aquarium, they're injecting CO2. About 5 or 6 in the evening, you see the bubbles of oxygen being released from the leaves. You actually see that photosynthesis happening. You see that whole cycle of reproduction, as I said, for shrimp, plants, etc. But the whole thing of keeping them all together in an ecosystem, it's a bit like playing God in a way, but you're trying to recreate what they go through in the wild, right? So, there are elements, and maybe I'll talk about that later, about when you go on collection trips in the wild, try to figure out what kind of conditions exist for them in the wild, so you can try to recreate it here, keep them happy. But I think in terms of the interest level and sustaining, it's because you learn so much. Biology, chemistry, later on when you get to large tanks, a bit of plumbing and physics and all of that as well. But it's just that you learn so much, and every species is different.
So you found the entire experience of rearing fish at home, educational, the process, and taught you more about all the subjects that you were learning in school than you actually learned in school.
Some of those, because those were all in books.
Right.
But here you actually see it happen in front of you. However, before my 10th standard exams, I made the same argument with my mom, but she did not buy it. So the keys were taken away to the fish room until I finished my exams. But yes, I did find that actually seeing a lot of those theoretical concepts happening in front of you, you learn so much more.
That's what kept you hooked on. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Did I hear you say playing God, or did you say praying God?
Bit of both, depending on the fish species that you keep.
Okay. Because either way it made sense to me. I think the joy of being in something that gives you happiness. Osho describes it as a divine experience. He says being one with creation, where there is effortlessness, where there is, in a way, willlessness. And he says will and effort bring conflict, but when you are one with what you love doing, then that entire experience is divine. So that's where I'm drawing an inference from that term that you just used. So I have a very important question for you coming up on the other side, but I'm going to move to Ram to start off his journey. Okay. So Ram, my first question to you is, when we met for coffee, you did indicate that you're pretty much like anybody else growing up in life, having multiple interests. And if I reflect back on that conversation, I remember you telling me you had a deep interest in music, a lot of interest in theater, dance, and of course art, given your dad being such a profound artist himself. Where did photography come into the scene? And do you recall an anecdote? Was it one event? Was it an introduction to it by your parents, or did you meet somebody? How did photography get into your life?
This, I think it's like one of the most important questions that needs to be answered. So, like you said, yes, everything started with music and theater. I did I learned the guitar a little bit, and then from there I moved on to doing like backstage and ticketing and learning how things work in like the theater environment. And of course I could never dance, but however I admired people who danced, and of course art as well. I started admiring art in all aspects, maybe music, or again everything is considered art. The specific memory which brings me to photography is, with my father being, we're always in mess. Clean up your mess, right? And it starts with, first thing, clean up your house, and that's where life becomes clean. It's we detox. At that point, an envelope just fell down with like a lot of black and white small images just shattering around. And when I picked up those, they were phenomenal images. And I walked up to my father and asked him, what's this? Who photographed these? For which his answer was, I photographed these when I was about your age. And at that point, it was all film. So he used to say how he didn't have money about, not printing them. So just negatives and just looking at them and saying, oh, this one is good, this one is bad, make like the smallest print, and you're happy with it. And he used to develop his own prints and everything from the beginning. And later, when I started showing a little bit more interest, he gave me his took his own old, the Nikon FG21, it was a film camera, and he opened it, he pulled it apart and told, this is how everything works. It's like how he taught me the basics for me to get this on, and I was still in school. And somehow, taking pictures started there, but never in the time would I have thought that this would be a passion that would grow into eventually a career.
Oh, that's interesting. So I didn't even know Keshav had an interest in photography. So he's so much celebrated in the world of art and cartoons, but photography. So that's interesting. So that's where it started with that. Okay. So how did you let? So again, the question I asked Ashwin, seeing something, and especially when it's from within the family, when you look at your dad or a sibling or an uncle or a mom. You come with an inspiration, right? But how did you sustain that inspiration? Any memories of how that inspiration has sustained especially during the adolescent years, when your interests keep wavering and keep jumping all over the place?
Brutal criticism from father. So there was this time I remember from school. I was looking at. There was a lot of fashion going on in TV, and specifically, in fact, parents encouraged me to watch anything and everything that was going on. So, in one of those fashion channels, when I was looking about a program about how fashion shoots were done, I got so inspired that I walked up to a friend of mine in school and I said, hey, you have a Mercedes, right? Come, let's go do a shoot.
Wow.
So, we did the shoot, but after all that was done, I was so excited that I completely forgot about the technicals. It just flew over my head. When we went back home and looked at all the pictures, every single picture was blurry. That's when I got a major aspect of it. It's like, here you go. That's when the criticism started from there, and it said, you could do better. So everything that I go through, it's one step at a time, know your roots, and then break them. So it goes from there.
So what I'm picking up is that one of the reasons why your interest sustained was perhaps it started with dad, and then it kind of became ingrained in you to raise the bar.
Oh, absolutely right. At every step.
And you realize that I got to do better than I did the last time.
Definitely.
So it's blurred, how do I get it perfect? And if I think it's perfect, how do I do better? So that led to the sustenance of the interest.
Definitely so.
But then I have a curious question. Why did you go to college to do physics? A, that's question A, and part of the same question B, having joined college for physics, how did you decide to jump out of it? What was the reaction from your parents, from your peers, from society, like Attai, Mama, Tinde, Chitapa, all those people there? So how did you handle that ecosystem?
So, one thing was, I was sure that I didn't want to do engineering on one side. The next thing that was close to it was, I was always interested in arts, which is any form of art. So I said, again, I approached my father and I said, why don't I do Viscom? He said, we brushed through the syllabus together, and the college provided us, and he said, everything in here is available online, right? So why not? You can do something else and learn the same thing parallelly. So there's nothing quitting. So for art, there's no right way to learn art. So you can learn from anywhere, everywhere, draw inspiration from millions of things that's just lying around you. So the next thing was, either it was computer science or physics, because I couldn't do math. So which physics, I could do calculus, but not math. So that was a no-brainer. So I said, in school I did programming, which I was not all that fond of. So the only option sustained was like, okay, physics. So while doing it, I could also do a lot more things that I could study. And while I was doing physics, again, I said I could do calculus, but it got to me at one point, and I had evening college. So my college started only by 1:30, right? So every morning, left home, say 4:35, just taking photographs and clearing my head. So that, in fact, was just, that's how the photography journey started. It was just to clear my head. It was a form of meditation, if you could say, right? And to answer your second question, when I was in my first year of college, a friend of mine said, hey, another friend of mine is getting married. I'm going to take some photographs. Would you want to come back? I said, okay, fine. Went there, did some pictures. I put it up on Facebook. And another friend who saw that said, hey, I'm getting engaged next month. Would you want to come photograph my engagement? You didn't believe it. I photographed that engagement for 3,000 rupees. That was like my first earned money.
Okay, yeah.
So, thanks. So with that, it started into, and that was in the first year of college. And by the time I was in my final year, I had like a whole bunch of shoots that was lined up with like the weddings booked year in advance.
Wow.
And eventually, those shoot dates clashed with my exam dates. So then I had a choice to make whether take up my exam or take up the shoot. Of course, I've gotten advance and I had I had to do right by my client. So I ended up doing shoots and I said, next exam, from Artha semester, it's never happened.
Okay, okay. I'm going to draw a very important learning here and then go back to the question that I still feel you have not answered, which is the part where he talks about clearing his head, meditation. Now this is something very, very important. There is, on one side, there is physics wearing him down, and on the other side, he wakes up early in the morning and goes out there to clear his head. Okay, this is what is called immersion, where when anything that gives you joy turns out to be an immersive experience. He's using the word meditation, but to simplify it, immersion really means when your source of happiness makes you forget all your worries. Now many people ask, so how do I understand what gives me bliss? If you can be in a state of non-worrying, doing something, that is your bliss. If you can be in a state of non-frustration, that's your bliss. So that's what I'm picking up from there. Beautiful point there. Thank you so much. You're too young to be having immersive experiences, but I'm so happy that you are. That's very important. So many people have these experiences but can't articulate them. But now I come to the important question. So semester thali podla, exam thali podla, but uruvinar avangala eppadi manage pannunga?
To be honest, my dad,
society, the peer level, machan dey nee mattum pass pannala, how did you handle those things?
Appa college for that. And then he wrote a CA about so many times and failed miserably all those times. But yet he got through on success, right? So that was the thing is, he taught me in one way that don't care about what others say. If this is what you truly want to do, the word truly there, not just oh, I'm going to do this for 6 months and forget about it for the next. Continue doing that. We can face everything. It's as long as you keep repetition, right? So that's like one word that I would say. So when people say, oh, I'm engineering panta. I'm happy.
So that was fantastic. I think that that calls for some reflection here. As parents, can we get to the point of being courageous about letting our children just be?
Yes.
No? I think that is the most important quality that we as parents need to possess. Many a time I feel that parents come in the way of children. We bring our insecurities, our fears, our worries, or I think that's the lamest story that you can give a child.
It was never that.
So you had that support. You had that support. And I think there is another learning from what perhaps must have happened between Keshav, Amuda, and Ram, which is that don't look at what others are doing. You know, we used to work with a brand called Pizza Corner, and the Pizza Corner chief executive, the founder, was a Lebanese gentleman, and we were all sitting in the office. We launched Pizza Corner ahead of Domino's and Pizza Hut, and somebody walked up to him and he said, "Sir, Domino's is going to launch very soon." And Antoine Bakash, the founder of Pizza Corner, stood up, big hefty man, and he thumped the table 3 times and he said, "You don't deliver a pizza looking over your shoulder. You deliver a pizza looking forward." And that has stayed with me all my life. You know, this is very important. You don't live your life looking around you, saying what are others doing. You live your life living it the way you ought to be living it. And I think that's very profound advice. Fantastic. I have another interesting question for you, but I need to go to Ashwin to continue this journey. But before that, we're going to take the quiz break. Okay? We're going to ask you a quiz question. And for my first question this evening, I would like to ensure that Ram's family, immediate family, does not answer this question. Okay? This is a question where I ask you, this is a quiz segment where I ask you a question on each of my guests. Okay? So anybody can answer this question except Ram's immediate family. Okay? So connect Ram Keshav to a very famous greeting card company. Was it too easy? Was it too easy? Not Archie's, not Archie's. Hallmark is the answer. Geeta gets it right, so Geeta, will you step forward? Okay. Hallmark. He joined the Hallmark Institute of Photography in Boston. That's why I said his family cannot answer the question. You need to give this away to Geeta. That was quick. That was very quick, Geeta. I didn't expect it coming like a Virendra Sehwag sixer of the first ball.
Imran Khan. Okay. It wasn't a fast Imran Khan. Whatever.
Okay. This one is, so this one I specifically request Geeta to give others a chance. Okay. And anybody else can answer. Anybody can answer. This is an easy one. This is an interesting one. It's a trick one. Which is Ashwin's favorite school? Yeah, who said the second answer? The second answer, not the first one. Where did the second answer? School of Fish. Absolutely right, sir. Please come forward. It is a school of fish. Yes. That's why I said it's a trick question. You do the answer? Thank you. It is a school of fish. So a shoal of fish, as I learned, is when fish hang out in a social environment. And when they start moving in a direction, in the same direction, they're called a school of fish. So that's his favorite school. So we had some fun there. So 2 more mugs coming your way. Sir, I didn't get your name.
My name is Govind.
Govind. Thank you. So Geeta and Govind get the mugs. More mugs coming your way. Stay tuned, everybody. Ashwin, on to your journey. So I have that same question for you. If by class 10 you were so enjoying rearing fish at home and had a deep interest in sustained interest in that field because it was teaching you a lot, why did you go on to do a BCom in Loyola and then an MBA and then a master's in the UK and then an MBA? So why did you take a path away from that field? Why not something like, and I am asking this in a very, uneducated sort of way. Why would you not have done marine biology or something like that?
Well, it's something I considered, but at that time, I don't know why, I just wasn't looking outside of India, and I didn't speak to many people within India. The few I spoke to said there wasn't much scope. Yeah, I think there actually was a lot of scope. Like if I looked beyond staying in India, I think a lot of those, many years after, I had the same question, like, why did I do that? Because you get to go and work in those ocean areas, large public aquariums, you get to dive into those tanks, and just make sure everything works. Or go out into the ocean. So that's something that at that time did not seem like a viable option for me in terms of livelihood. So that I put that aside and I just carried on and went with the flow as it were. It wasn't a clear-cut plan. Then I do my BCom, I do my MBA. It just sort of flowed that way. You go where the current takes you, I guess. I wasn't fighting any current, to use another fishing metaphor. But yeah, just went that way. But eventually it catches up.
So that's a. I was. If you were not going to bring that up, I was going to come up with it. I think the path that he took was pretty normal. There's not scope. This is the way we would talk at home, right? So these are normal conversations in any home, and you get into the economic, swept by the economic current, and you move in the direction. But how did in your life, how did fish come back, or the aquatic life, an interest in the aquatic life? How did it come back? Was it one epochal moment when you felt perhaps like some of our guests on the show have said, I was completely lost and I realized that my joy lay here and I need to be here and not here? Or did it kind of keep coming back again and again in your life and reminding you that this is where you belong? How did it happen for you?
It's more the latter, I think. I think it's something that's always been there. So through college, I think when I was in the UK, I did not have an aquarium. But otherwise, I pretty much had it. In the UK and Vietnam, I did not have an aquarium, but otherwise, I've always had it. So it follows you, right? It's something you do. It's meditative to me to set up an aquarium or watch the fish once it's set up. And it's different, I think, from a lay person. If they see an aquarium, it's super relaxing. But when you're as nerd obsessed as we are, you go and trim leaves here, you plant okay, you constantly obsess over the little details. In a way, that's our meditation too. I'm talking about the really obsessed fish nerds that are out there. Friend Rajiv is here as well. Since school, he's been my partner in crime when it came to just managing those 32 fish tanks also.
Wow. Oh, he was alongside you on that.
Yeah, he wasn't, his mom didn't allow him to keep fish tank, so he used to live on First Main Road, so he used to come to that main road.
Okay.
And we used to try and take care of all those fish. But that's always followed me. So not only in Chennai, when I moved to Bangalore as well. So when we came back from the UK, I discovered IndianAquariumHobbyist.com, which is a forum. So back in my day, I just had a bunch of fish books. And someone through word of mouth will come to look at my tanks, or I go to look at someone else's tanks. But then we found this forum that really helps bring all that knowledge together. So we went they have an annual conference, and I found there were so many like-minded people, so many hobbyists. So a great forum to exchange knowledge. But in Bangalore as well, it continued. We go on collection trips in the wild, habitat study trips in the wild. Saw some truly beautiful places. Saw some beautiful places that have been ruined by humans as well. But you really get an understanding of how fragile those ecosystems are. So that sort of continued. I think I'm rambling a bit, but basically it sort of continued. And there wasn't one epochal moment as such. I think it was always there. That's something that I really found very relaxing.
So in the span about 20 years goes on in your life, you keep multiple jobs, you change cities, you even move out of the country to Vietnam. All of that happens. Where did the idea of saying, hey, let's set up kind of an organization that we can call our own? Was it always meant to be a business, or was it meant to be an enterprise that would spread awareness of this field? How did Aquaria as an idea get seeded the first time for you?
Well, through that forum I spoke about, I met, like I said, many hobbyists. And I met my business partner, Prem. So Prem used to live in Kelly's at the time, and I used to live here. But on Sundays we drag our long-suffering spouses to each other's house to sit and talk about fish. I'd go look at his tanks, he'd come look at my tanks. So we became very good friends. It wasn't only about the fish at that point. So I was into gardening as well when I was young. Then at that time we started getting planted aquariums. There's something called nature aquariums. And it's an art called aquascaping, which is basically landscaping but underwater. So you use these Japanese gardening principles, etc., to sort of create these magical underwater habitats. So we really started getting into that, a lot of discussion. And at some point, we were good friends, but me and Prem had never spoken about starting something. But I had the idea for a couple of years, because we're hobbyists, we go to these shops, the regular shops, and there's no passion there, there's no knowledge. It's work for them, right? So tomorrow the fish die, the plants die, it's more business for them. That's how it's a very transactional kind of thing. There's no awareness creation, nothing. And we've been to a couple of places abroad where it was a very different experience. So I had the idea, why don't we do something like this? It's viable abroad. Why hasn't someone done it here? It's all unorganized sector. They approach it in a very transactional way. Prem also had the same idea. But we didn't talk about it until after I signed a contract to go abroad.
Okay.
So from Bangalore, I signed a 3-year contract, and then I came back to Chennai, met him, and then we talked, and
He had a job to keep as well.
yeah,
That's
but he was here on the ground, so
he was
managed a few things.
And where were you living at that time?
I was in Bangalore, but moving to Vietnam.
You were moving.
Yeah. So I left and came back to the launch of Aquaria in December 2014. And we started it off only as a gallery. So installations in homes, offices. It was meant to be a business, but a business through which we could educate people as well and raise some awareness.
I love that. I love the point. Many people think that bliss cannot be business, and that's completely untrue. Bliss, following your bliss, can drive your economic engine, and I love that idea. I'm going to talk about that in a little while, but I'm going to go to Ram for picking up his story again, and then come back and we'll pick up on Aquaria and why bliss is good business, and then I have a very important question for you. Okay, so now let's come back to your journey. So you were pushing your physics semester. Sorry to keep reminding you about that. Okay.
Always happy.
and on the side you were doing wedding photography, and I think if I remember right, you did something like 400. You've done 400 weddings, a little over that. So you've been doing interesting stuff in terms of letting your photography bring you income and all of that. Okay, and then you decide at that time, just as courageous as it was to give up and stop pursuing physics, you park your thriving business of wedding photography on the side and decide to go to Hallmark Institute of Photography. So why did you take that call? What and how, in retrospect, has that experience defined what you're doing today?
So, simple answer, I was not happy. It's like I stopped being happy. So in say late 2014, early 2015, my booking started going down, which is not because like the calls weren't coming in. I started accepting less and less, saying only wherein at a time where I had done in say December of 2013, I still remember out of the 30 days, I was shooting for 23 days, right? And then later, it's like 1 or 2 weddings a month. And then it came to 1 or 2 weddings in 2 months. And so the gap between weddings started increasing. And I started realizing that it was just, how do I put it in? So happiness was just going down. So when I wake up to think about, am I going to keep doing this every single day? It's repetitive. I'm not growing in a creative manner. Of course, money was piling up. That was like another different thing. And there was one way how I could use it was, you know, give some to family, and then thinking about what next to do. And so I didn't tell my parents. I didn't consult with friends. I just was typing, you know, photography courses. Yeah, that was just a Google search. I was thinking globally, like ambitions photography. Let's go learn something new. And this ad came up for Hallmark and Brooks Institute. And I applied to both and got it both. But one program was say 2 years. The other one, Hallmark, was just 10 months. But I chose specifically Hallmark because of the faculty who were teaching there, right? And I wanted to come back. So go, finish, have like exposure, experience as much as possible, but be back as soon as possible. So that happened. 10 months, back to Chennai. So
okay, interesting. I want to draw a learning here, which is I stopped being happy. Money started coming, but I wasn't happy as I was. And that's an important point in all our journeys. You may at times encounter that feeling that Ram's been through, that I've been through, that anybody who's pausing to reflect on life will be through, which is, why am I doing whatever I'm doing? Is it making me happy anymore? And if it's not making you happy, you need to review that choice. Many times, fear comes into play. How did you overcome that fear, Ram? Okay, to say, okay, but the call was the wedding good, but no, I'm not going to take it. How did you overcome that fear and move forward to kind of retool yourself? Because what Hallmark did was it raised the game for you, right? You are now going to look at the way the world's best people were looking at that medium, right? So how did you overcome that fear to reach that threshold?
So with regards to like taking less and less orders, it just happened, you know, involuntarily. I didn't think about it. I was like, the dates were open, I was available, but on call I was like, oops, sorry, I can't do it on that day. No reasons given, nothing. I just said, you know, I can't. And I just ended up traveling. So the only time when I was scared was when I had to move, the time before I moved to Hallmark, right? I said, you know, I'm giving up on money to do something completely different. And I don't know if that's going to bear fruit because it's expensive. And how is that going to be helpful? Because I've never gotten like a tour of the school, I've never been there before. It's just what they promote. So all I've seen is like, if they're good at marketing, and if they're good at projection, and if I had gone there and found it to be nothing as to what they said it was, I'm screwed. That was the only time when I had to think about whether that was the right decision for me to go to. That's when my dad smacked on my head and said, you're young, this is the time when you can actually take the risk. Money can be earned, like, you know, you lose money, you earn money, but that's just something that you're going to take. And my parents were like, even my mother, she was like, I got into this group, and the way that I broke the news to them was showed them the acceptance sheet, and I said, so I'm moving to Boston in 2 months. That's the way that I walked in, and they were like, what? Because we hadn't figured out the financials, or we hadn't figured out, you know, if this was even a possibility at that time. It was completely unimaginable. And suddenly, after getting the acceptance letter, that's when we sat down as a family, and then we thought, whether do I go, do I not, and that's how this was.
This is so fantastic. Let me tell you first of all, bravo to you,
Thank you.
and to your parents. Why I'm so excited about this answer is, I think if you overanalyze fear, it will get to you. Okay? And the best way to deal with fear is to meet it in the eye. To look at it face to face. Ingena solludu. And go with that direction. That way Gautam Vasudev Menon did the world a big favor. Jesse ne solluda. So whatever our guppi ne solludu. So you just go with that flow. So Ingena solluda. I think that's very important. And another, sentiment about fear is that it's not the fear itself that cripples you. It's your inability to look at it in the eye that cripples you. So if you face it, you can move forward. That's why I'm so excited. And the other thing is the perspective that Keshav seems to have given him, which is that money will come, money will go for the experience, the exposure. At the end of the day, whether it's a Hallmark or a Harvard or a Loyola or I have another Bliss catcher here who's a veterinarian who in the middle of his life decided to go and sign up for a veterinary course. The degrees we all get are just sheets of paper. It's the experience, the exposure that completely transforms us. So that's what was valuable for you, right? So I have one quick question before I go to Ashwin, which is, what did that teach you about you, that experience at Hallmark? What did it teach you about you and the work that you're doing today?
I was nothing when I went there. It opened up to be how they treated me, how people would treat me in the real world, right? So, to give you a quick example, my mentor and my teacher, Mr. David, if it was not for him, I wouldn't be the choreographer that I am today. So, his one simple word, how my dad gave criticism, like my father says, brutal criticism, he took that criticism, he raised the bar to that. So when my dad pointed out and said, this is wrong with this picture, David would say, reshoot. That's it. One word. So it's like thinking about all the concepts, like working out, from pre-production to production to execution to the post-processing to keeping the final image in mind, sourcing of the fabrics to bringing everything, you feel everything. And after putting in so much of effort, 18 hours within the studio, no water break, no restroom break. You're there holding your breath, trying to get the right shine on say that one stone of the diamond. And after all that, you go showing the print. It says, reshoot. That's it.
Wow.
So we start back from scratch. The concept might be good, but the way your execution, and so repetition again leads you to, bettering yourself in that way. So we reshot the same thing again and again until he says, there it is.
So it made you realize your true potential by raising your standards, right?
And not just that, the one more thing that I'd like to add is when I said they treated you how people in the real world treat you. So they, for example, they put you in groups that you hated one person in a group, and they would know that, they would anticipate that, and they would pair you with that one person that you don't like. Because they say, clients are not fair. So you need to start learning, respecting even your enemies. So start working with them. So all my grades were actually dollar credits, basically. They were fake credits. So an assignment would say $2,000, and by the end of that semester, I had to calculate how much of profit that I've made, and I had to file my own taxes for that semester. So
that's interesting.
So keeping
really
all my bills and how do I raise an invoice? What is it that I need for life? So much more than photography or techniques, they taught me what it means to survive in the real world. The survival is the main thing. So it's about how open you are enough to approach a client on your own. So not to be scared. So now I don't have the fear. I can just walk into a restaurant and say, hey, I'm a photographer. This is my portfolio. I'd like to do some shoots for you for free. Have a look at this. And if you like it, let's talk about retainer from the next.
That's interesting. So it prepared you for life.
It definitely
prepared you for life. I'm going to come back, but I'll go to Ashwin. There is a very interesting observation that I have on Ram, but that leads to another question, and I'll park the question for a bit and go to Ashwin. Ashwin, Bliss is business. We were on that point. Bliss is good business, and I've shared this here before that there are three circles in life. The first is the economic circle that we are all familiar with. The second is the passion circle. What are you deeply passionate about? And the third is the excellence circle. Now, the three circles where they converge, what brings you money, what are you deeply passionate about, and what can you be excellent at, which is what can you be world-class at. When all the three circles converge, that convergence point is your bliss. That's what I have understood from life. Now, in your case, that turned out to be the aquatic life, and the idea that was born out of that for you was aquarium, right? So, and perhaps because of your corporate exposure, you were looking at it as a sound business opportunity, right? Apart from the fact that you had a contract that you had to fulfill, and you were employed in Vietnam at the time, were there any factors that delayed your decision to come back and join the business called Aquarium? You seeded it with Prem, and then you were away. It wasn't until 2017 that you took the deep dive. So were there other factors than just the contract with Vietnam? With the Vietnam company?
That was a big factor because there was a penalty clause, so to speak. So there was that, but it just sort of kept building up. Maybe in the first year there was a little more uncertainty. But the very fact that we had started something and there was something back home, coupled with a couple of other things, right? So I always knew I wanted to do something like this. And then 2015, my daughter was born. And then I wanted her to do something. So one of the things I'd like to teach her is to do something she loves. But down the line, she might just turn around and ask me, why did you do that same thing?
Wow.
So it might, I want to like walk the talk, right? So I had an idea, I still have an idea, and we started Aquaria. What's the harm in trying it? So it's a little later than maybe, ideally would have happened, but at least it happened. There's no point looking back and, what if, should I have? Factors were here, started it. And it's going well. I think I do miss the salary, to be honest. It's one of the more addictive things, right? The salary. But I have no issues with motivation, getting up and going into work in the morning. I have no issues about sitting in meetings and wondering why the hell I'm there. It's because someone needs to see me sitting there, not because I'm adding any value. So all of those issues which were there every day, that was right. So that's a big pro of the whole thing.
This is so beautiful and so well articulated. Thank you so much. You were saying the addiction to the salary keeps you in meetings which are boring and you keep wondering what the hell am I doing here? And I think 90% of the world lives that life, and that's called the earning a living life. And there you are, happy. You say you don't have a problem waking up in the mornings. The Japanese call it ikigai. They say your reason for being. It's a beautiful concept. Your reason for being human. See, we call ourselves human beings, right? So the reason for being human is to be happy. And to wake up every morning looking out to avenues where you can be totally happy. So the Japanese say that, what is your ikigai? What do you wake up in the morning for? And in your case, it is Aquaria. So you haven't had that problem ever since you came back and joined the business, right? You haven't had the waking up problem, sitting in a meeting problem, dragging your feet, none of that. Okay, let me ask you, in terms of a vision for Aquaria, okay, how do you balance the two between, promoting awareness, which may not necessarily drive the business economically, and promoting the business itself, which is making your quarter-on-quarter numbers happen and all of that. How do you balance the two?
Well, I think it's easier now. The focus earlier was on installation, right? So we had a gallery, focus was only on architects, interior designers. That's a different conversation. But we started retail as well as a way to engage with more people. So encourage walk-ins, that kind of thing. And you know, in the beginning also, it's not like a lot of people walk in to buy stuff. But they like the space. The feedback we keep getting is they haven't been in an aquarium store like ours. And the idea is not, we don't hard sell. If they come in with a problem or with a need, we provide a solution. We talk to them, we understand what the issue is first. And many times the customers just don't, they don't come in and buy it, but they come back later. So a lot of them just come in to have a chat. Hey, I'm thinking about changing my tank setup. I'm thinking of going for these African fish rather than the South Americans. What changes do I need to make? Stuff like that. So there we can engage them a little bit more. The idea is also, and we haven't done it yet, but to sort of put in that education sort of angle to it and go to schools and educate them a little bit more. As I said, it's probably the most educational hobby that I've come across. But there's also a lot you learn about the environment. Right? So like I said, I've gone on these collection trips in the wild, and what we're doing to nature and to the habitats out there is absolutely abysmal. And when you actually keep those fish and you see their breeding patterns, etc., and how they live and thrive, and to see all the plastic everywhere, I think kids pick up on this a lot quicker. And if you tell them about it and you show them how beautiful it is, they'll take that little bit of extra care. And that's what the next generation needs to do, right? We need to handle that education. So that aspect to it, which we haven't started yet, is what we do. So there are two sort of ways to look at it, which is what we're trying to do.
Interesting, very interesting. I'm glad. Why I made you talk about the way you've structured your operating model is many people have this question on, can I make my bliss sustainable in terms of not just for me, but for people around me, and can I profit from it? And what you just said is perfectly answering that. That's one of the reasons why I asked you that question. Let me go to Ram. I'm watching the time here. I have two very significant questions to each of them, and this is going to be a beautiful question, at least from the way I'm looking at it. So I'll look to both of them to answer it in their own ways. But your question, Ram, is I had the good fortune of being somewhere like a fly on the wall, working with Raghurai. He was my senior colleague in India Today when I was a young journalist. And more recently, so I've always been marveling at his ability to get the most amazing pictures. Recently at a Hindu Live for Life event, Raghurai talked about the concept of drishya and darshan. And he said, drishya is what you see, and darshan is what you're shown. Okay? And he said, as a photographer, I believe in the value of darshan. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be shown something that I can capture. Okay? So there's a very deep spiritual quality to that sentiment between drishya and darshan. So I have to ask you, as a young photographer who found this very meditative in the mornings to go and shoot on the streets of Chennai, do you see a spiritual dimension to your art? That's one part of the question. And maybe to rephrase that question, what happens to you behind the camera when you're shooting? Especially when you're doing something as niche as character study portraiture or your beauty is within series. Do you see a spiritual dimension to your work?
For me, dedication is everything, and so spirituality, or however you may put it, so dedication comes first, right? So to give you the perfect example of what this darshan that we're talking about, so what we want to show you, right? So what we want to see, and how we want to photograph it. I'm going to give you a quick example of like an experiment that Canon had done. This video is on YouTube, where they bring in 6 different photographers, and there's just one person there, okay, the subject, and every photographer is explained as such. You know, this photo, the person who's there, the subject, is a millionaire, right, or he's a divorcee, or he's a fisherman, and he's a drug addict who's now in rehab. So how these 6 people portray him is the whole experiment. And so when the pictures are final and they display, all of them are invited in together, right? And when we look at the photograph, it's the same person all over. But in the essence, when you look at the picture, right, the character is different from each and every picture. This is because of what the photographer's understanding about the person is, right? So that is what I'm trying to do with character study portraits, where I try to study the character and not just the person. It's not about the beauty as to the physical beauty. It's about the inner beauty, where I sit down with my clients and my shoots are fun. You should, like when you're on, I'm on set, my camera is right here. I have like a 20-minute conversation with the person that I'm photographing, and in between I go, okay, that's like something very interesting that you said. Now I build on that concept as to what they're saying, and then that makes them happy or sad or however. And that emotion is what I try photographing.
So that's how I see this as your ability to express the inner voice of your subjects.
Yeah.
Right? You get them to open up
Very much so.
in that way. And you believe that's a very important quality of
With a conversation we lost. That's what makes the difference between a good photographer and a photographer who understands. And anyone who has like, so to be simple, quality and quantity, it's just that. So as simple as that.
Fantastic, fantastic. Young mind, but a very, very deep, intense mind. Thank you for sharing that. Ashwin, my question on similar lines for you is, what do fish teach you that we perhaps miss? So we go back to the first question when you, the first observation you made about having the pair of guppy at home, and then the 108 guppy babies, the complex bottoms, and I said I have a question for you. So what is it that fish teach you, or you're able to learn from fish about life that we're all probably missing? What happens to you when you're watching an aquarium, when you're watching the species that we are perhaps missing? How do you see it from your mind's eye?
I'll give you another story, another fishy story. So there's this fish that's probably one of my favorite fish. It's called the hill stream loach, and it's found in mountain streams. My wife hates it because it reminds her of Pali, right? But these fish have very interesting markings, and some of them are very, very small. But they have this kind of vacuum kind of disc around their mouths, which allows them to stick to the glass or to stick to the rocks, right? All this is theoretical knowledge I had. I kept them before in my tanks. But I went, and I'll never forget this trip we made. It was a place near Keshav temple, and it was beautiful. We went through the jungle, we drove in a jeep, many hours, and there was this clearing in the jungle, and there's this whole river that's coming through around the curve. And the whole river comes through, the air is cold, the water seems completely clear, there's a whole bunch of rocks in the bed, and it looks like it's not moving, the water, right? Because it's crystal clear, you can't see any debris, it's clean. You step in there and realize that the current is really strong. So the whole river comes around that bend, and that's about 15 centimeters of water, that's it. And you step in there and you have to actually steady yourself against the flow of the current. In there, amongst those rocks, are those hill stream loaches, and they've evolved to stay against the current. They graze on the rocks, right? So if they want to move to another rock, they just lift, the current takes them, they latch on. Wow. They fight amongst each other, they live, breed, and feed amongst those rocks. In that current, which I have to steady myself against. Life will find a way. It always finds a way. And there are things out there that we've never even imagined, never even dreamt of. But somehow someone is out there, some things are out there, living their lives. That was a magical moment for me, to actually see that in the wild. It's all that theoretical knowledge. When you see it happen, it's a different thing altogether. I'm not sure if I answered your question. I tend to ramble a bit about
but the key point is that one of the things that you learned is that life will find a way, right? And that's what we all miss in a way when we are challenged with situations that we're dealing with, and we think that we have to solve everything ourselves. So I think that's a very important learning. So that's the aspect of life that you can pick up from looking at fish, for example, in either a natural habitat or an aquarium. That's what I'm inferring from your answer. Thank you for sharing that. We will take 2 or 3 questions depending on the time that we have. I'm going to move to the audience to ask you questions. But please keep your questions to questions, not to observations. You can give chuppies and puppies and everything to them after the conversation is over. But keep your questions to questions, please. And we have time for 2 to start with. So the first question.
What's the advantage of having an aquarium in the house? There are such a big.
I'm not going to speak about the Vastu or Feng Shui because I think a lot of people, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I know a lot of people use that. For me, I think it's the ability to have a different kind of ecosystem or a habitat in your house. And from my point of view, and something that a lot of people have found is that looking at an aquarium, at the fish and the plants or whatever, is very, very relaxing. That it's an underwater kind of element to it. And just looking at them, if they're happy and colorful, the fish, it'll show. If the fish are happy, the plants are happy, it'll show. And there's nothing more relaxing in the world than that, my perspective.
I like the last part. The fish are happy, it'll show. And can fish make us happy? Sure they can. Right? And it sure makes you happy. Yeah? Okay, the second question, please. Yes, maybe.
Francis say the camera never lies, but then you say that the photographer does his own perception comes through, his own perception of the subject. So what if the camera lies?
So camera is just an instrument, right? It reproduces something, so it's like a scanner. What's in front of you, it like makes a copy, throws it out at you. And at the end of it, what used to happen with those cases, like you have the negatives, you pull it out, and I've seen my mentor correcting exposure like how we do in Photoshop right now, controlling that manually. So when the enlarger is right there, he lifts it up and then he wiggles his hands around, and he used to manually color his works. And that's the same thing that we do in Photoshop. So it's not much of a difference. But of course, we do a little bit more than that when it comes to the fashion line these days, but that's a separate story altogether. But to answer your question, camera never lies. It's there. It's the perception of the photographer as to how. So for example, when I'm going to interact with you, I'm going to ask you a few questions to get to know who you are as a person. And depending on what kind of a shoot it is going to be, I'm going to suggest poses, right? And that's where the photograph comes into play. So, there's a couple of things. One, masculine pose and a feminine pose. To be honest, this right now with my shoulders straight, broad up, this becomes a masculine. What if I just turn around with my shoulder facing the other way, and instead of perpendicular, now I move my neck parallel to my shoulder, just chin it down a bit, and now this becomes a feminine pose. And just close my eyes and put my chin up, that becomes elegance, right? So it's just little turns of the body posture that we study. That's where everything lies. So as a photographer who works with day-to-day people, I need to learn how to pose so that I can help with people who are, based on what the photograph is for. So it's for purpose is what we do. I hope that answers it.
Interesting, fantastic, great answer there. Great question. I'm going to ask you both quick questions before we go on to the quiz segment where your mugs are coming to you. Quick questions. Both of you live in the real world. Both of you run enterprises. For you, you are the brand. For you, Aquaria is the brand, and you are one of the key people there. how do you deal with insecurities, worries about paying the bills, running an establishment, bringing money home? Quick answer from you and a quick answer from you.
It's difficult. We survive, and it's always okay to ask for help. It's okay because right now, earlier when I was in the wedding industry, I made money and I was able to give that much of money back to home. Like first, any check that has ever comes in, the first thing happens is gives it to my mom and say take it. She, however, drops it in my own account, but that's a different story altogether. So whatever that may come in, I just drop it off at home. It's for family. But right now, after quitting on such an industry and moving back, and also having spent, for education abroad, I had to up my game with regards to getting better equipment and getting myself more equipped with all of the other accessories that I had to buy. So again, shamelessly, I went and stood there and I said, give me more money. I need this to survive. So eventually, it's going to take time for you to repay that, but it's the growth process.
So you see it as an investment.
It's definitely an investment. So the only thing is, it's always okay to ask for help when you need it.
Very good. Good point. Yes, Ashwin.
I agree with Ram. I think the other factor is that you need that kind of support system. So having that support system and the support of your family and friends is very, very important. And in my case, when I decided to take the plunge, and they were like, finally, alright, I've spoken about it enough. And everyone was sick of hearing about it.
Did they believe you first? When you said you were taking it?
Yeah, because I've been speaking about it for years, since school, since college, all through work, and they're like, oh, finally this guy is, doing it. So it wasn't a surprise to anyone, I don't think. But having the support after is very, very important. I'm a first generation entrepreneur. I don't come from a business family either. But whatever I picked up, I also think things happen at a certain time. So whatever I picked up in my 15 years of corporate world, I'm learning new stuff every day as a businessman, but we try to use that as well to give a different experience to our clients. So it's a bit of everything. There's a lot of learning there, but having the support also of your family is very, very important.
This is very important. This is a good point both of them brought up. See, if you look at any career, it does take time maturing into a very well-oiled economic possibility, right? Or an economic engine. It takes time getting into its own groove. Somebody like Keshav, Ram here, starting off early in life, my sense is by the time you're my age, you would have it running at full throttle, or perhaps even earlier. And in the case of Ashwin, he has the maturity to understand that it's probably not going to happen overnight because he seeded it only 3-4 years ago. But the most important thing is that both of them have very, very supportive ecosystems back with them. And you will always find an ecosystem. It might not be in the form of a family, it might be in the form of a friend, it might be in the form of a benefactor, but if you follow your bliss, that's what Campbell says, a door will open, a Messiah will come and show you the path forward. That's the beauty of this entire idea of following your bliss. And I can see that standing out in both your stories. Thank you so much for answering that question. We're almost winding down for this evening. Please stay tuned. We do have the quiz segment now, where we will have you shoot your questions. So your question, Ashwin, to the audience, and this beautiful mug awaits you.
So can you name a fish that gives birth to live babies? Doesn't live. Too easy?
Too easy. So who answered it? Who answered it?
Not including
Not her family. Not his family. Not his family.
has answered it.
Okay.
Black Molly.
Okay.
Black Molly.
Another one.
Okay. Do you have another question? Do you have two of them answered here?
Yeah, let's try another question. Okay, what fish, according to Feng Shui and Vastu, does anyone know what are the fish that are usually recommended?
Goldfish.
Which is what? Yeah.
Koika.
Okay, please come forward. Please come forward. I believe the answer is right. Can you explain the answer in detail?
Koika.
I just guessed because I see them at
So
restaurants.
there you go. Thank you.
Yeah, goldfish also, and arowana.
Koi, C-O-Y.
K-O-I.
Koi.
Okay.
That's interesting. Okay, didn't know that. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. Sorry for the guppy question. Answer, those who answered the guppy question. Okay. Seem to be a sitter. So okay, Ram, your question.
You've heard the word photography, right? Of course, it's a big question, but can anyone tell me where the word is derived from and what the actual meaning of photography is? What it literally means?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Writing with light.
Perfect. What is the answer? Writing with light. Writing with light. Yes. Wow. Okay. Murali Krishna, sir, please come forward. Writing with light. Writing with light. Did you know the answer? Excuse me. Did you know that answer? Was that the same answer?
Yes, but I already have a
No. Was that your answer? Okay, we're not giving you another mark. And I just wanted to make sure you had the right answer. Thank you, sir. Yes. Writing with light. Very good question. Learn two new things, koi and writing with light. Okay. Very good. So we come to the end of today's session. We're going to give away our coveted Bliss Catcher trophies to the two Bliss Catchers with me today. And then I'm going to do a quick wrap. Please stay tuned with us. It will take exactly another 3 minutes. So Ram, here's your trophy. Welcome to the Bliss Catcher family. Here's your coffee too will taste different.
Hopefully pure.
Yeah. Yes, we'll do that together. Okay? Thank you, Ashwin, for being on the show. Here's your show. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a fascinating evening. You know, from Ram's story, I pick up conviction and courage as important qualities. The courage to choose not to do and complete physics in college. The courage to say no to wedding photography, which was a thriving business, and say, let me go and retool myself, and the courage to come back and still stay away from the lure of what the market is doing, which is multiple things to make money. I think those are very important learnings from his story. Ashwin, the conviction and courage at the ripe old age of 40, if I may say, okay, he's still far, far younger than I am, but 40 is still, most people consider it a dangerous time to experiment with life. But having the courage to take that important call and say, this is what I want to do with my life, let me go ahead and do this. So I do pick that up, but I also pick up something very, very beautiful, which is that both of them are so happy doing what they're doing. They're so full of life. And this is what Campbell says. Campbell says, if you follow your bliss, you will come alive. You will be radiating a lot of energy, which drives you on in the right direction in your life. Where your bliss will take you, you don't know. But the direction will give you a great sense of joy. Javed Akhtar says that slightly differently in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. He says, let me get this right. If I remember right, he says, "Dilon mein tum apni betabiyan leke chal rahe ho, to zinda ho. Betabiyan, restless excitement pulsating through you. Then you're alive," he says. "Nazron mein tum ख्वाबों की बिजलियां लेके चल रहे हो, तो जिंदा हो तुम." In your eyes, if you're radiating the electrifying power of your dreams, then you're alive. So there you are, two beautiful gentlemen, Ashwin and Ram, and two beautiful journeys, and people with courage and conviction, most importantly, being alive following their bliss. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was an amazing conversation. I loved having you both on my show. Ladies and gentlemen, 25th August is our next Bliss Catcher edition. It's a Madras Week special. We have two gentlemen don't necessarily belong to Madras. That's the speciality. Surajit Guha, the very well-known singer, who after 25 years in the corporate space took the deep dive to go after what he believed he loves doing, which is singing. He doesn't call himself, the world calls himself a close resemblance of Hemant Kumar, of his voice. And the second one is Varun Iyer, who is, to me, he's a seeker, young, a little older than Ram, but he's a performer, yoga teacher, and a wandering artist, if I can call him. Okay, so please join us 25th August, 7 p.m. last Saturday. It's always happening at Odyssey. Thank you so much. Good evening.